Welcome to my channel. Subscribe and enjoy my new stories every day. The city was washed in the golden hues of a late summer evening as I left my office building, the workday buzz still echoing in my ears. Normally, I'd be the last one to leave, the glow of my desk lamp a lonely sentinel in the sea of cubicles. But tonight was different. My phone had chimed with a message from Lucy, my wife, that set my heart racing. I miss you, my love. I can't wait to see you again. Her words were like a balm, soothing the rough edges of a grueling day. With a rare spark of spontaneity, I decided to surprise her by coming home early. The drive home was a blur, every red light an agonizing delay, every moment spent away from Lucy an eternity. I rehearsed a greeting in my mind, imagining her delight. Would she jump into my arms? Kiss me like she used to when we were newlyweds? The thought alone quickened my pulse. I parked the car with a skid, barely remembering to lock it as I made my way to our front door. The house was unusually quiet when I entered, the familiar creak of the hinges louder than usual in the silence. "Lucy, I'm home early." I called out, my voice a mix of excitement and nerves. No answer. I dropped my keys and bag, my footsteps quickening as I headed towards the living room, then paused. A faint giggle floated down the hallway, a sound so out of place it sent a shiver down my spine. My heart thudded painfully against my ribs as I approached the bedroom door, now ajar with a sliver of light escaping through the crack. The sight that greeted me was like a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. There, in the dim glow of our bedroom lamp, was Lucy. Her blouse undone, her hair a wild cascade around her shoulders, and beneath her, not the empty bed I had expected, but a man, his face obscured, his hands on her waist. "Lucy." My voice was a hoarse whisper, disbelief and anger mingling in the tightness of my throat. She turned, her eyes wide with shock, then filling with an emotion I couldn't place. The man scrambled from beneath her, grabbing his shirt in a clumsy rush to cover himself. "How could you?" I managed, the room spinning around me as I braced myself against the doorframe. "It's not what it looks like, Mark," Lucy cried, her voice desperate, pleading. But the betrayal was as clear as day, the intimacy of their position undeniable. Words failed me as I turned, leaving the room and her stammered explanations behind. The cold night air hit me as I stepped outside, the numbness setting in. I felt betrayed, shattered by the woman I loved. That night marked the beginning of the end for us. The revenge plan began to form in my mind, not out of spite, but necessity. I would not be made a fool. Lucy would come to understand the depth of my hurt, the cost of her betrayal. As I drove away, the weight of the impending divorce and the wreckage of our marriage loomed over me. I knew one thing for sure, our paths would never cross again after this. The plot of our life together had taken a dark turn, and I was now the protagonist of my own revenge story, set to unravel in the chapters to come. The city's neon lights blurred into streaks as I drove aimlessly, trying to outpace the chaos unfurling in my mind. Finally, I pulled over near a quiet park, the dark outlines of trees barely visible against the night sky. I needed clarity, a plan, something to anchor the whirlwind of betrayal and hurt swirling inside me. Taking deep, steadying breaths, I replayed the evening's events. The image of Lucy, half-dressed and deceitful, burned behind my eyelids. I couldn't just let it go, I couldn't be the passive victim in her narrative of infidelity. Revenge, a word I never thought I'd contemplate seriously, now seemed the only fitting response. I dialed my best friend, Alex, his number familiar and expected. The phone rang twice before he picked up, his voice groggy with sleep. "Mark? What's up? It's almost midnight." "Alex, I need your help," I began, the words tumbling out. "I caught Lucy cheating on me tonight." There was a pause, a heavy breath. "God, Mark, I'm so sorry. Where are you?" Sitting in the dim light of my car, I explained everything. Alex listened quietly, only interrupting to ask pointed questions. By the end of the call, we had devised a preliminary plan. I would gather evidence of her affair, documenting everything to build my case for the divorce. Lucy wouldn't see it coming, she would think I was broken, defeated. But I would be anything but. The next day, I started by installing a few discreet cameras in our house. I needed concrete proof of her infidelity for the divorce proceedings. The installation was quick, my hands steady despite the turmoil inside. With each click and test of the cameras, I felt a grim satisfaction, here was something I could control. Then, I visited a divorce attorney, a woman known for her ruthless efficiency in such cases. Mrs. Hammond, I want the best possible outcome from this divorce. I need to ensure that Lucy doesn't walk away unscathed, I explained, laying out the evidence I had already gathered. Mrs. Hammond nodded, her expression unreadable. We will do everything we can. It's good that you're collecting evidence. It'll strengthen your case significantly. Armed with legal advice, I returned home, a place that no longer felt like mine. Lucy was there, her face pale, her eyes red-rimmed. She rushed to me, her apology ready. Mark, please, let me explain. It was a mistake, a terrible, stupid mistake. I looked at her, my face betraying nothing of the cold resolve that had settled in my chest. Save it, Lucy. I don't need your excuses. Just know that actions have consequences. Her mouth snapped shut, confusion and fear replacing the pleading in her eyes. I turned away, ignoring the pang in my chest. This was necessary, this was justice. As I retreated to our bedroom, now just my room, I knew the next steps would be harder. The divorce would be messy, but necessary. Each piece of evidence I gathered, every legal document I signed, would be a step toward reclaiming my life from the ruins she had made. The chapter of our marriage might be closing, but the story of my retribution was just beginning. The intrigue of how far I would go, and how much Lucy would lose, was yet to unfold. The following weeks felt like navigating through a minefield, each step fraught with tension and the looming threat of confrontation. I moved through my days mechanically, my interactions with Lucy cold and minimal. Every night, I reviewed the footage from the cameras, the evidence piling up, a crushing confirmation of her continued deceit. One evening, as the sky bled orange and purple at sunset, I prepared for another silent dinner. Lucy seemed agitated, pacing the length of the kitchen with her phone clutched in her hand. I sat at the table, pretending to be absorbed in my laptop, watching her from the corner of my eye. Finally, she broke the silence. Mark, we need to talk. I think we can work this out. I want to make things right. I closed my laptop with a snap, my gaze steady on her. Work this out. Lucy, I saw you. How do you suggest we work out your affair? She flinched at the harshness in my voice, then steadied herself. I know I made a huge mistake. But I love you. He meant nothing to me, it was just a moment of weakness. A bitter laugh escaped me. A moment? Seems like many moments, Lucy. Moments that you chose. Her eyes filled with tears, but my heart was hardened against her. Please, Mark. I'll do anything. Therapy, counseling, I'll cut off all contact with him. It was tempting to consider her pleas, to fall back into the comfort of our old life. But the betrayal was too deep, the wound too fresh. It's too late for that. Determined to push forward with my plan, I excused myself from the table, her sobs echoing behind me as I went to make a phone call. I dialed the number of the man she had been seeing, a bold move fueled by a mix of rage and a need for confrontation. Is this Greg? I asked when the line connected, my voice icy. Yeah, who's this? The voice on the other end was wary. I'm Mark, Lucy's husband. We need to talk. There was a pause, a hesitation. Look, man, I don't want any trouble. Trouble? You should have thought about that before, I cut him off sharply. Stay away from my wife. This is your only warning. The call ended with a definitive click, a small victory in the sea of chaos. Yet, it did little to quell the storm within me. The next step was clear. I compiled the evidence and sent it to Mrs. Hammond, preparing for the legal battle ahead. Days turned into weeks, and the divorce proceedings began to take shape. Each legal document I signed was a nail in the coffin of our marriage. Lucy tried to reach out, her messages a mix of apologies and pleas, but I was resolute. Finally, the day came for our preliminary hearing. We sat on opposite sides of the courtroom, the air thick with tension. When Lucy's eyes met mine, searching for a sign of the love that once bound us, she found none. I was a stranger to her now, my face set, my resolve unwavering. As the judge called the session to order, my attorney presented the evidence. The footage, the calls, the testimonies, all painting a picture of betrayal that Lucy could not deny. Her attorney argued for leniency, for reconciliation, but the course was set. Lucy's face crumpled as the reality of her situation sank in. The court adjourned, and as we left, I felt a weight lift slightly off my shoulders. The battle was far from over, but the end was in sight. As I drove away from the courthouse, the city lights flickered in the twilight. The path forward was lonely, yet necessary. The intrigue of how far I would go to see justice served was not just about retribution anymore, it was about reclaiming my life and dignity from the ruins she had left. The courthouse stood as a solemn backdrop to the final act of our disintegrating marriage. The air was heavy with foreboding as I walked its sterile hallways, ready to end this chapter of my life. The final hearing was not just a formality, it was the culmination of weeks of meticulous planning and cold determination. Lucy's face was pale when she entered the courtroom, her eyes darting nervously around the room, perhaps looking for an ally or a sign of forgiveness. There was none to be found. Beside me, Mrs. Hammond prepared her papers, her expression unreadable but her intent clear. As the proceedings began, I watched Lucy intently, noting the way her hands trembled slightly as she clutched her purse. The judge called the session to order, and Mrs. Hammond rose, her voice clear and commanding as she outlined the final terms of the divorce. Your Honor, we have presented clear evidence of Mrs. Turner's infidelity and deceit. We seek not only dissolution of marriage but also appropriate compensation for the emotional and financial damages inflicted upon my client. Lucy's lawyer tried to interject, a plea for leniency, but Mrs. Hammond cut him off with a wave of her hand. We have undeniable proof of my client's claims. And then, it was time for my move, a surprise I had saved for this final moment. Your Honor, I have something to add, I said, standing. The courtroom fell silent, all eyes on me. I have recently discovered that the affair was not just with one man, but with multiple partners. Lucy was not just unfaithful but has also endangered my health. Lucy's face drained of color, her shock palpable. Her lawyer sputtered, unprepared for this revelation. I continued, furthermore, I have evidence that some of these encounters were monetarily compensated. The murmurs in the courtroom grew louder as I produced emails and photographs, evidence of her further indiscretions. Lucy's lawyer was on his feet, objecting vehemently, but the damage was done. The judge called for order, his gavel a sharp punctuation to the chaos. As the judge reviewed the documents, Lucy turned to me, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and betrayal. Mark, why are you doing this? This isn't you. I met her gaze, my voice cold and steady. You brought this on yourself, Lucy. You deceived me, you humiliated me. Now, you face the consequences. The judge finally spoke, his voice grave. Given these new revelations, I am inclined to grant the petitioner not only the divorce but also the full claim of damages. Lucy's shoulders slumped, defeated, as her lawyer whispered urgently in her ear. But there was no recourse. The judge made his final ruling, and with each word, my marriage, and the illusion of Lucy's innocence, was irrevocably severed. As we left the courtroom, Lucy tried to approach me, perhaps for a final plea or an apology. I turned away, leaving her standing in the middle of the corridor, a broken figure shadowed by her own misdeeds. The drive home was silent, the city passing by in a blur. I had won, but the victory was bittersweet. The revenge was complete, insidious in its execution, and ruthless in its impact. Lucy would lose everything, her reputation, her comfort, perhaps even her freedom. And I, in turn, had lost the woman I once loved, now a stranger made monstrous through betrayal. As I arrived at my now solitary home, the weight of the past weeks settled around me. The house was quiet, emptier than before, each room a reminder of what had been and what could never be again. I sat in the dark, the only light the dim glow of the city at night, reflecting on the cost of retribution. In the end, the deceit was laid bare, and we parted, forever marked by the scars of betrayal. The final chapter of our story closed not with reconciliation, but with the cold, hard finality of justice served.